Welcome back to the Sebastian Johnson Show, hosted by the Black Menaces. So grateful to be here. If you're new here or if you haven't subscribed yet, go on and subscribe because today we're talking about important stuff. Today we're talking about how Joe Biden is finally beating Donald Trump in the polls. Yeah, quite a shocker to me at least, because last week he was just losing to Trump at the polls by like 5 points, but on average, 2 points across all of the polls. And Newsweek just reported this, and including all these different polls. So let me go through a few polls with you, and we can kind of talk about what this means and how that looks. Of course, we know that Nikki Haley just dropped out of the race, and maybe this affected the polls because a lot of people didn't think that Donald Trump would actually be the Republican nominee. About 30% of people didn't think he'd be the Republican nominee. So, with maybe Nikki Haley dropping out, that affected the polls, getting a jump to Biden because people recognize how much they don't want Trump in office, which can't be mad at that. According to the Kaiser Family Foundation, it showed that Biden was leading Trump 47 to 44%. That might seem like a small 3%, but 3% is kind of a lot when you think in the realms of 100, million people. It kind of is a lot. Or even the Emerson College put Biden up by 2 percentage points, 51 to 49%. That happened just March 5th and 6th. And the last poll by the Morning Consult put Biden at 44% and Trump at 43%. And that was just on March 1st and March 5th. This is huge news, given that Donald Trump is truly a threat to our democracy. As a reminder, he said this on True Social. He said, okay, do you throw the presidential election results of 2020 out and declare the rightful winner, or do you have a new election? A massive fraud of this type of magnitude allows for the termination of all rules, regulations, and articles, even those found in the Constitution. So, given that, of course, the 2020 election was obviously fraud, as we know, right? The big election lie. And he said that should be allowed to terminate the Constitution. Obviously, we know that is tomfoolery, simply put. But that's what millions of Americans think because they're being led by Donald Trump. But on top of that, I think it's important to talk about what Project 2025 is, because this is what we're truly battling in this Biden versus Trump rematch. Of course, utmost importance because Trump is truly a threat to our democracy. Trump being a threat to our democracy does not stop the mishandling of what is happening in Israel-Palestine, and it doesn't negate any things I've said either about how disappointed and how Biden is losing a lot of votes. And I think these are two separate issues in a certain way, because Trump truly is a threat to our democracy. And that comes with his Project 2025 and the Christian nationalist movement, which he is hoping to embed within his administration. On the Project 2025 website, they say, it is not enough for conservatives to win elections. If we're going to rescue the country from the grip of the radical left, we need both a governing agenda and the right people in place ready to carry this agenda out. Here's what that means. And I think it's important we break it down. The Associated Press broke it down into 4 main pillars, and they are this. First, to restore the family as the centerpiece of American life and protect our children. Of course, we know that the family is referring to a heterosexual white couples, nothing out of that and out of that norm. The second doctrine is to dismantle administrative state and return self-governance to the American people. I'm going to read these and I'm really going to dive into what this actually means. The third, defend our nation's sovereignty, borders, and bounties against all global threats. It does include a big lockdown on the southern border. And lastly, secure our God-given individual rights to live freely, what our Constitution calls the blessings of liberty. They're not talking about living freely as Black and people of color. They're not talking about living freely as women in regards to abortion. They're not talking about living freely as queer people existing in a safe place, especially trans kids. They're not talking about that. They're talking about living freely, having guns, and this conservative idea of freedom, which is really the negation of freedom of other people. Basically, Project 2025 believes in something called the unitary executive theory. And this would consolidate dozens of federal agencies to place them all under Trump's control. It would restrict Congress' ability to oversee the president so that there is a complete lack of checks and balances when it comes to the executive branch, and especially Donald Trump. Also, they would be filling the presidential administration and the executive branch with simply Trump loyalists, not people qualified for the job, but Trump loyalists who will defend MAGA and push the MAGA agenda in however way it needs to be. And if this was January 6th and the Trump administration was filled by these people, most likely January 6th would have ended very, very differently. Biden is beating Trump in the polls, which is good because he's definitely the better of the two. And Trump is a third to our democracy. I still think that Biden needs to fix a lot of things to get the votes that he needs to actually win. But I think this is a good sign, and hopefully Biden will come to his senses, make the ceasefire happen in Palestine, but also realign himself a little bit in terms of global politics so that more people can fully support him. A lot of people in the uncommitted vote said that they would vote for him if things change. And we do need that, considering that Project 2025 and Trump are true threats to our democracy. And that's something that we should be weary about. Anyways, thank you for joining me. And this is Sebastian Stewart Johnson Show.